there's a really specific distinction between price and value in the minds of, the consumer, a customer, and certainly the business. We have a price and we price our things based on a variety of things, but price really is a function of math and value is a function of a story. And if you are unable to fulfill the promises you have made in the marketplace via your story, that's going to cause problems.
It's Slackers, unscripted business insight from two lifelong builders. I'm Jonathan.
And I'm Jaime, and we are here to show you how big ideas travel across industries.
Consider it your weekly companion on a path to better work and a better way of working.
So today, for example, we are going to talk about the customer journey. Look, every customer is on a journey. From the first time they hear about you to the moment they buy, to whether they stick around or walk away. The problem is, most businesses don't actually see that journey. They see their funnel, right? They see their P&L. They see their own process. But the customer journey is rarely that neat, rarely that linear. It's messy, it's emotional, it's full of detours and friction points. So today we want to talk about why the customer journey even matters in the first place. It's not a poster, it's not a buzzword, but it's a way to truly understand what it feels like to be on the other side of your product or service. Because when leaders can see the journey clearly, they stop managing transactions and they start designing experiences. So Jonathan, to kick off, I got to ask, when you even hear the phrase customer journey, like what comes to mind? What does it even mean?
Yeah, it's it's a great question. The first thing that comes to mind is the artifact of the customer journey map, which if you've seen these, it kind of looks like a game of chutes and ladders or something. There's stuff going on everywhere. And it might be one of the more difficult kinds of documents for most people to consume who have no idea what it is, which is ironic because when we're looking at the customer journey, we're trying to identify the kind of the smoothest path from beginning to successful action that we can define and understand. So when we look at journeys, I think it's important to think of the journey as the journey, not an artifact. It's not a document, right? Your customer journey isn't just a document. It's about what happens the moment somebody gets exposed to your brand, to engaging with your brand, to learning more about what you do and what problems you solve, to applying some value to that, from deciding to enter into a business relationship with you, whether it's buying your product or otherwise, to making that purchase, receiving the product, and feeling validated about the journey that they just went on and completed successfully, hopefully. But as a brand and as an organization, as you look at your customer journey, you really need to understand what you're doing at each one of those phases, what you're hoping your customer's doing at each one of those phases, what problems you're solving for them at each one of those phases, any delighters you can add to those phases to make people excited about the fact that they're doing well on this journey, and really thinking about it through that customer. What is happening in this particular moment of our journey? What options do they have? What have we put in front of them? Have we removed as much friction as possible? It's really about that experience that your customer's on right now. And it's much more important than a particular artifact that might describe or a KPI that might measure what your customer journey is or is not, but is really the fundamental understanding of who are we talking to? What information are we sharing with them? What are they expecting to get? And how do we help them along this journey so that it feels like it was very intentional? Every step of the journey moved me on to the next step, and I'm moving on to that next step with some level of satisfaction.
Well, right out of the gates, you've keyed into something that has always stood out as an obstacle when trying to have this conversation with teams, regardless of what level of team member is a part of that team, is the distinction between the artifact or the deliverable of a customer journey map and the concept of a customer journey. I mean, I think the word journey is used intentionally. What we have to kind of accept as people who are willing to embark on this process of working on this type of a topic is that the word journey is important, because what you're trying to say is the people that we seek to serve with our products, our service, with our art or whatever, they are on a journey. It's a process. And we're never going to be able to predict it end to end perfectly for every single one of them. But we have some pretty strong opinions based on the information we have and the things that we have in the marketplace as receptors to learn about who, our customers are and what they do, to make some informed guesses around what that journey likely looks like, maybe feels like, across the entire cycle of their interaction with us. So That concept is totally decoupled from the artifact of, hey, I'm going to go to my desk, or somebody at a meeting told me I had to go to my desk and make a customer journey map. Where do I even start with that? It's important to make sure that we understand that those two things are different. Because I've certainly been on the receiving end of somebody going, great, got it. I'm going to go make a journey map. I'll be right back. And then, they go to their desk, and I assume the process is something along the lines of, well, I'm going to hit the internet and be like, what does the journey map look like? And just maybe that's a key thing. The journey map is the deliverable. I mean, I have seen hundreds of different versions of what a journey map is supposed to look like. I mean, have you experienced the same thing? Or I mean, have you like come away with some sort of anxiety around, oh man, I'm not sure what we're going to get back from this exercise. They might have missed the intention here.
Sometimes a journey map can be quite different depending on whether you are working at an agency, working with an agency, or working internally at your organization. I would argue that if you wholly understand your customer journey, you could probably put this in bullet points in a Word doc and communicate this broadly to your team and to your organization in a way that would be really effective. It's more about, do you understand it, and can you articulate it, and can you measure it and improve it? And I think, a lot of us tend to, in our various organizations, we also tend to focus on the things in the journey that we do best. And that sometimes can be a trap, right? Which is, if I'm really, really good at making people aware of my brand, but I'm really bad at engaging them when they lean in, then I'm kind of wasting my time, right? Like, if I continue to get better and better and better at putting people into the beginning of the journey with a brand awareness, and I'm really poor at brand engagement or product engagement from that point forward, then I'm creating gaps in my journey where I'm almost guaranteeing my customers are going to fail or fall into a crack somewhere that I've created for them. And that instead of improving those areas of my journey, I keep putting fuel into the things I think my team is, or I'm best at. And understanding the journey is obviously a key step to beginning the process of, like, what are the ways we do this today? When does a customer engage with us, from brand awareness to brand engagement to decision making and product selection to making a purchase to post purchase and delivery and receipt and beyond, reviews and other things that might come out of that. And if I look at that, how it affects my organization or my team, and like, where are all the touch points here that a customer is going to have? What do we do for them today? What are they looking for from us? And maybe even some assessment of how good do we feel like we are at this, moving them. It could be measured, right? I know exactly how many percent of people move from step 1 to 2. It could be a combination of sentiment that you're engaging with your customers and getting feedback on that. But the idea is that your floor of your experience is whatever you're worst at in your customer journey, right? So if there's one step that you tend to be kind of poor at, right? We're really bad at this phase, right here, but we tend to be mediocre or good at other parts of the journey. It can be extremely helpful for your team to rally around that one gap in that journey that you've created for your customers and improve that to raise the floor. Right now, I'm going to have way more people move through the whole process because I've improved the weakest link of my journey. And if I continue to wrench on that in that way, my floor keeps going up, right? I get better and better at moving somebody through the whole journey with some high level or respectable level of success, so that I can kind of keep filling those gaps, keep removing friction. And overall, I'm having much more success getting more people all the way through the journey. And then I can start focusing on becoming excellent at each of these things. But so often we gravitate either toward the thing that we're best at. So let's be more good at the thing we're really, really good at, and kind of ignore the areas where we're falling down, or even be unaware of those things, which is even worse. Is that, you think your job is it's run ads, get people to click on my brand, and then all the magic happens and we've done our job. And that is literally step 1 of your journey.
Where you just took it reminded me that not only are visual metaphors a helpful thing in many areas of the world, but certainly business. We hear lots of things like journey, and we certainly hear things like funnel. So, I mean, right out of the gates, one of the things that you just made me think of is, how is the journey different from a company's funnel? Because that gets used all the time, right? Well, let's work on our funnel. We got to go optimize the funnel. Are we measuring everything correctly in the funnel? What's it look like at the bottom of the funnel? Where, like, all these things. How are those two things different?
Yeah, I mean, I think we get into metaphors in our business culture, and sometimes what we use to describe something isn't really what's happening, right? Like, a lot of times you'll see the funnel, And the theory of a funnel, right, is that things are falling out of your funnel, right? Like that there's, you start with a bunch, and at the end you've got a small percentage of those willing to transact with you, and the rest didn't work out for whatever reason. And some of that is going into the funnel of assuming that, let's say you convert at 5%, just as an argument. So for every 100 I put in the funnel, 95 are going away, that to never be valued again, right? They're throwaway out of my funnel. And the 5 that fell through the funnel turned into money. So that's, my funnel is showing me that I kicked out all these people and then some made it through. And I think when you look at it as a journey, you could say, well, what did all 100 of those people do? Like what did they actually, what was their path with my organization and with what my offering is? And if you purely look at it as a funnel and just accept that 95 people just get bounced out and you move on, and we want them, and then what happens is people focus on, okay, we need to make the 5% number bigger. Well, I want more than 5 out of 100. I want it to be 7. All right, well, we need to find 2 more of the 95 that fell out that I can move to a conversion. And we really start thinking about it kind of in these weird terms of being like, it's a percentage of this, and I want this number to be 7% instead of 5%. And so I start kind of re-engineering the funnel, trying to grab another couple in this process. And really, if that's all you're looking at, you're really ignoring the experience of the 90 to 95% of the people that are coming to your brand. But if you can look at it through the lens of a journey, there's 100 journeys there for you to understand. Some of them might have been like, this isn't for me, or I accidentally clicked on this ad. Still journey, right? It's just it's not my intended journey for these folks. But understanding all 100 paths in that journey will help you validate or invalidate. What are we putting in? Are we putting the right things in front of these folks during these moments? Because if 95 people leave out of 100 because I didn't do the right thing, and not just that I'm a bad fit or it's the wrong solution to their problem, or whatever else it might be, is this, I've done a poor job of helping them on this journey, then just trying at the very end to turn 5% into 7% is going to be really unlikely, and certainly not very scalable or sustainable. But it's what happens a lot. People look at the very last step and be like, oh, I need to get more of these people to do the last thing. When in reality, you're better at looking at the journey of everyone prior to that, to saying, is there a better path that I could put more of these people on that would result in me getting 7, 9, 12 more coming through, my experience. So at a really high level, I think that's one of the differences. As an analogy, we kind of look at a funnel as acceptable loss. This is all the stuff that's just going to get thrown away. We need to look at the people who made it out of the funnel, are the people we're really going to focus on. Where when I look at it as a journey, I'm looking at all 100 people and what did they do? And that, how do I keep improving the journey? And it's only by understanding what all the people who didn't convert did.
And I think another way to frame it that's been helpful for me, and maybe challenge my thinking here, but I think another way to help draw the distinction is thinking really hard about who the main character of those two stories are. The main character in the story of a funnel is the business. That's the star of the show. The motivators are driven by the business motivators, by the business desire. The main character in the story of a customer journey is the customer. So really what we're also saying here is the exercise of even considering the journey of a customer to begin with is an exercise in strategic empathy, is making the decision as the business to step outside and have an out-of-body experience and go, no, we believe we're leaving value on the table if we don't put energy and cycles into looking closely through a lens of strategic empathy at what everyone who interacts with us at various touch points in a cycle of interactions, what that experience is actually like for them. To your point with the funnel, of course, the funnel implies that there's absolutely going to be a chunk of the population who we can't serve with our offerings, with our products and services. And that's okay, by the way. Let's just make sure that those who realize this is not the thing for us, that the reason they're making that decision is because we've done a really great job of arming them with a fantastic amount of information and motivators and a story where they rapidly and quickly have a somewhat, pleasurable experience that might even net out with them going, oh, this is not for me. But we put the effort in doing that. And at that point, you almost want to say thank you to that customer, that potential person who walks away and says, hey, it's not for me. Because really, the other way to think of that is they've helped you refine your message even further. Because if that is if the reason they are leaving is because you've done such a great job of framing who you are and the value that you bring to the marketplace, that they're able to process that information and make an informed, thoughtful decision around this is not for me, then it allows you to continue to refine your message of who you are for. And one of the things we all have to accept, right, as builders of things, is that the work we bring into the world, the business, the products, the services, the art, by design, if we're doing our job, we are not going to be for everybody. Let's just make sure that to use, I think what you said, sort of that drop off, that natural chunk of the audience who you're sort of throwing off as they move through a funnel. Let's make sure that they're not leaving because we failed them at some point in their interaction with us. Let's make sure that they're leaving because they feel confidently that we are not for them. So I think that's another way of thinking about, again, something you and I talk about a lot, that role of strategic empathy, having that out-of-body business experience to put yourself in the shoes, try to see the world through the customer's eyes. I think that's kind of the top line conversation starter for a team. If you pull them all together and say, hey guys, we're going to go down this path. We believe there's value in the exercise of a customer journey. But what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's good to frame it in the sense of like that the funnel is very business and internal focused, and the journey is much more customer and external focused. And all of us who are builders, anybody who's making products and solutions out there, you're always looking at, well, what's the business case for doing this, right? Like why are we doing this for us? What's the business reason? It's a new product, it's new margin, it's revenue that we're chasing. It's all the things that drive our business. But it is remarkable how often an organization is wholly focused on that, right? Which is my message is I want you to do this thing because this is why we are here, was because we want to make this revenue selling this product in this industry. So buy our thing. And when we look at those journeys, it can be very easy to focus on the output only and miss the other side of that coin, which you mentioned, but is that my customer's here to solve a problem that they have. And they're hoping, based on what I've told them so far, that I can help them solve that problem. And that is the lens. They do not care how much revenue I make, how much EBITDA I've got at the end of the day, what my balance sheet looks like, or anything else other than can I solve their problem in a way that it has equal value to them to solve it. And throughout their journey, that's what they're going to keep checking is, can this brand really solve the problem I have? Okay, you got me here. Show me that you can actually solve this problem that you just told me you can solve. Okay, great. You've got me into the solution. Now, is this a solution that fits my needs and my value exchange that I'm willing to do here? But I'm looking at it through this. I have a problem. I'm trying to find out who can help me solve this problem. And is the right value exchange there for me to do it? The business cannot be solely on the side of we're here because we're chasing a revenue number, or we're here because this much profit is in it for us. Because they're always going to be looking at it as, well, how do I get a little more money? Or what can I do to close this deal? Even if it maybe means something that isn't to the best interest of the customer or whatever else it might be. There's a handshake there. We can't just do the things that solve all our customers' problems that have no business value, right? There's not a lot of businesses that succeed that way. But you have to have both sides. You always have to be looking at like, okay, what's the business case for doing this? But why would someone care that we're doing it in the first place? So that if we're talking to our customers, we need to be exclusively talking to them about how we're helping them solve their problem. That is what they care about. When we talk amongst ourselves, we can talk about, are we pricing this right? Is this creating the right level of revenue? Are we getting the right conversion rates that we need? Like, is this driving the business in the direction that we need, given the cost and all these other things? But to expect that our customers care at all about that is a big trap, right? Because we start to operate as if both sides of the equation are all about the exhaust, right? Whatever the revenue, margin, EBITDA, you name it, comes out the other side. We all get so focused on that we might forget why we're here in the first place. And like, oh, someone out here, there's a whole bunch of people stuck on a journey in some random place that we built. And we are not paying attention to that. We're only looking at the last 11 people that might hit the buy now button. And we've took our eye off the ball, and our customers are wandering out all over the place. And we're no longer fulfilling the promise we made that brought them there in the first place.
Yeah, it's really important, right? We're not arguing that business motivators aren't important. I mean, we are here to transact. We're here to operate in the marketplace. We're here to do, commerce and serve customers. And in fact, the capitalistic motivators for running a business in the first place, you can argue a big part of the reason why we do it is because it allows us to stay in the game. That's why we do have business motivators. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense just to only be oriented around one pole or the other. And really, I think what's important with either the journey map as an exercise or the customer journey as a topic to consider, is that we are saying out of the gates as leaders and builders who are shaping products and services and bringing ideas into the world, that really you got to get good at being of two minds or moving between those two headspaces fairly frequently. Because it's not that the business motivators aren't important. It's something that you just said. It's like the business motors have to be able to connect, to have a bridge that exists between the desires of the business and the desires of the customers and the people you seek to serve. And building that bridge and acknowledging that that is a two-way flow of a relationship is an important piece because they serve each other, which kind of throws me right into a question that I feel you and I could probably spin on for a while, which is, okay, fair enough, guys. So can you think of a time where that exercise, the consideration of a customer journey, has truly helped somebody understand something, a business that you've worked with, where you've seen it firsthand, how it's made an impact? Does anything come to mind?
Yeah, I do. And I just want to come back to one thing real quick to kind of maybe put a bow on the last point you made, which is if we were to sit down as a business and we were to say the new objective here is we're going to do whatever makes our customers most happy, just regardless of our business at all. Like we're gonna give them whatever price they want, with whatever volume they want, in whatever configuration they want, because it's going to make them really happy. And so we're just going to do that. Everyone around the table look at you like you're absolutely insane, right? Which is like, you cannot just sell everybody something for $1 because that's what they want to pay, and also put all the bells, all the things, right? It make them as happy as you could possibly make them. The business would suffer pretty badly, probably. And yet, in many businesses around right now, everybody thinks the opposite's totally fine. Let's just focus on what's good for the business, and we'll lean into that. And it doesn't seem crazy as the thing that says we're just going to do whatever our customers want because if we make them happy, we'll be swimming in money. That's not how that works, right? You don't have a business case for that. But it's not preposterous for everybody to sit around a table like, what's good for the business today, and let's go implement that. That's happening right now. Like, we're talking right now, that conversation is happening somewhere, and yet the opposite of that conversation seems completely ludicrous. Like, we were just like, that's absurd. And we need, in some ways, the level of absurdity on the other side of the coin so that we do have that two-sided perspective of things, which is, what's the best possible way we can solve this problem for a customer that is also a good business, right? And that's where all the magic happens when we do all these things. But it is amazing to me how one of those things seems preposterous and one of those things seems totally reasonable, even though I would argue they're equally levels of ridiculous if that's your primary focus.
Oh, for sure. The outcomes from that worldview are so easy to wrap our heads around. We see the stock price go up. We see the revenue number go up. We see some number that was in the lower left-hand corner move to the upper right-hand corner. And that's just a familiar, comfortable, very easy data point for our brains to quickly wrap our heads around. So that's part of the tendency. Whereas the other stack of stuff, then you get into the weeds of, well, how do we measure it? How do we know one's truly informing it? It's sort of a fuzzier payoff. But we know, as people who are able to deliver effective products and services and businesses, we know they're related, and we know that they serve each other. It's just sort of a fuzzier outcome when you invest in the well, let me see the world through my customer's eyes, because it just sort of feels not as hard or true as the number that showed up on that right spot on the spreadsheet or whatever. But maybe that is the challenge of our time then, as people who are builders and leaders, is, well, you got to make the fuzzier feeling stuff feel more real. We have to feel those outcomes, because then suddenly we'll all perhaps care about it a little bit more. So I guess maybe that's my leading question of, to you is, well, where have you seen that actually play out in your experience?
Yeah, actually, I have a good example of this. So I won't call any specific companies out, but I'll talk about an industry that I've worked in where this was really apparent. So there was a lawn care brand, and their service was, treating and taking care of your lawn. So not necessarily like mowing and all the stuff, but make sure your grass is green and lush and no weeds and all that good stuff. The business model has historically been for that business is door knocking, door tags, phone calls, brute force, old school marketing of, if you have a lawn, then you're a potential customer. So reach out to everybody. The churn rate, right? So the amount of people that they were losing in their subscription services was astronomical, huge numbers. For those of us who work in subscription businesses and stuff, like the amount of customers you lose every month, if it's under 5% or so, you're feeling generally okay about it. These numbers were in the tens of percents and heading towards 50, 60%, right? So imagine, for every 2 customers you had to go get for a subscription service, you're losing one of them, the first 90 days or whatever. And that it continues that way, that you continue to lose them at that rate. And there was a lot of this trying to manage around that, right? Like, oh, how do we got to make more calls. We got to knock on more doors, and we got to hang more tags. We got to do more of the thing that we're good at, which is bringing people into the business. Not realizing that the thing that they're bad at is why all the churn is happening, why all the people are leaving. But the thing that they focused on was the thing that they were good at, which is I can go get more people. So even if I don't understand my churn, I don't understand why I'm losing all these customers, I don't understand all these problems, I feel like I'm good at getting more people. I'm going to go get more in order to keep the business moving, and I don't lose all my customers. I need to put more people in the funnel. More. Put people in. Go get people you lost, put them back in there too. Sell. Because that's what we're good at. And then it was time to take a look at the customer journey. What is really going on here? Why are we losing all these people in the first place? It's great that you guys can go get thousands and thousands and thousands of new people every single day. But if we're losing thousands and thousands and thousands of people every day, this is not sustainable, right? This eventually it won't last. You start looking at the journey. All right, let's take a look at the journey. What's really going on here? Oh, turns out people have a lot of concerns. They're not happy. Why aren't they happy? Well, we're not behaving like we promised that we would. So not only are we not really taking as good a care in their lawn as maybe we would like, and that we would hope, and that we promised, but we're also doing things like we show up when they're not expecting us, and we let their dog out sometimes, and we are there when it's a middle of a party because we missed our last date. We just thought we'd show up. I broke your vase when I was out mowing, treating the lawn. I didn't say anything. Like, there's all these kinds of things. And so people are leaving. And when they look at like surveys and things, this is a big trap. I'm going to call this one out, right? Which is that you look at a survey and people say, it's too expensive. I'm out. I don't want to pay this anymore. And too often we, as folks in the business, we're like, oh, we got a pricing problem. We have a value problem. However, all of those people felt that it was reasonable to sign up for that at that price at the beginning because of what they thought they were getting for their money, right? That was a reasonable deal. The deal was, I'm going to give you this much money and you're going to take care of my yard. And that's a good deal for me. That's the problem I have, is I want someone to take care of my yard, and I'm willing to part with this much money every month to do it. And yet, when I experience all those problems in the journey side of things that sour me on the promise that was made to me, now the value doesn't seem like it's there, because I don't want to pay the price that you're charging me to get something different than what I thought I signed up for, so I'm out. But I might describe that to you as it's too expensive. What you're trying to charge me for what you do is too expensive, even though I'm perfectly willing to pay the price I signed up for if I actually got what you promised me in that deal. And I see this all the time across many industries where they look at their surveys and their responses and go, oh, it's too expensive, it's too expensive, it's too expensive. And they think, we got to get our prices down, we got to get this stuff in line. But a lot of these are customers that they already had, and now they're losing them because they're too expensive. Now, there might be competitive price pressures. Maybe somebody's lowered their price to better than you, and you've got to take a look at that and understand what's going on. But if you don't wholly understand that the journey that customer's on, you can't make that conclusion. Because if you go through your whole journey like, man, my customers are happy all the way, no complaints, all of a sudden they're leaving. Oh, because of price. Oh, I've got a competitor out there that's undercutting me in a substantial way. I need to go figure something out, right? That might be the outcome of that. More often than not, they're saying the value exchange that we all agreed on at the beginning isn't holding up anymore. You're not holding up your end of the deal. You told me you do all these things, and yet you're not doing these things. Not only not doing those things, you're making my life painful in other places that I didn't expect it to happen. And so I don't want this deal anymore with you. And so therefore, yes, the price you're charging me is too much for the service that you're offering. But the price point itself isn't the problem. The problem is I'm out on this journey that you do not understand, and you're not bothering to understand what's going on in our relationship that we now have. And you're focusing on the fact that, yeah, we're losing lots of customers, so just go get more customers. Once they actually looked and said, wait, our customer's on a journey that's different than we thought. We thought these other things were happening. That's not what's happening. They're opting out because we're failing them. We're underperforming on our promise to them. This isn't a competitive market pricing issue. This isn't somebody's doing a big promo somewhere, or we should be doing a big promo, or our prices are out of whack. Our promise is failing our customers. our journey is inefficient. We're upsetting them. They're leaving. And all we know how to do is go get more of them. That's our superpower. And yet all we do is flex that muscle instead of saying, hold on, we get it. We know how to get more people. But if we do not understand and fix the stuff in the middle, it's just a giant waste of time. And the amount of organizations right now that are wasting time in that way is extremely high.
It's making me think of a few things. And I remember talking about this company. And in fact, I think, you and I had spent some time working side by side on some of these projects with this one. And it's so funny because it reminds me of, let's take the, hey, you're only playing to your strengths kind of piece of it. When you look at it that way and you look at what an organization like that was really good at, you could make the case. It's like one of those, when you have those chats when you go, hey, the business you're in might not actually be the business you think you're in. Like, really, you are a boots on the ground sales organization who happens to be wrapped in a lawn care package. But that's really what, we're going to be real clear on about what we do. That's what we do. If you were running strategy workshops, man, you could probably make the case where somebody during the course of a 3-day retreat thing goes, maybe we don't do lawn stuff. Maybe we should apply our skills at being hardcore salespeople to selling some other thing. Who knows? That's just a reminder of, the business you think you're in is not always really what it is if you kind of assess your strengths and weaknesses. But also the unwillingness, or at that time, the inability for them to have made any inroads in investing in understanding the customer journey meant that the customer journey had become a tax. So when you're looking at the price tag of the thing, to your point, what's not being calculated in that price tag from the person who says, on day one, yeah, that story that I am now buying into based on the price that I see in front of me, that seems reasonable. What you now realize is that the entire span of interaction that they've had with you, because that entire bundle of interactions has not been thoughtfully cared for or nurtured or invested in, all of those interactions are little micro withdrawals from the price tag. So when you hit them with that survey question at that point, yeah, it is too expensive, because what you didn't factor into the price was I had no idea that all of these little moments with you that I was going to spend between the time that I said, yes, come do it, and now when like the bill is coming due again, has just made me feel that the cost of doing business with you, business being the entire experience of just interacting with you, actually is a tax on my time and my wallet if you're really asking me to go reevaluate the price tag. There's a really specific distinction between price and value in the minds of, the consumer, a customer, and certainly the business. We have a price, and we price our things based on a variety of things, but price really is a function of math, and value is a function of a story. And if you are unable to fulfill the promises you have made in the marketplace via your story, that's going to cause problems. To circle it back to the theme here, we're talking about an exercise in trying to evaluate the customer journey that's rooted in closing those gaps, is rooted in the value story. Because what we would love to feel at the end of the day as builders and leaders and creators is that the value story we brought to the marketplace, that we can back that up, that the way we behave, it's a walk the walk thing. And how are we supposed to know if we really do walk the walk unless we take the time to go audit the actual journey that our customers are going through? So with that company in particular, I remember talking to you about how you had to kind of walk them into this exercise, as a whole. So, I mean, from your vantage point, how did that go? Where did they start to see value in going through that exercise at all?
Well, I'll tell you, one of the most important outcomes of those conversations was, and you brought this up a few minutes ago, is the realization that we are excellent at outbound sales. We are not excellent at lawn care. And if we need to make a decision as an organization, if we aspire to be exceptional at lawn care as the thing that's our superpower, that much more aligns with what my customers are coming here for than the fact that I'm a really good lead magnet and I'm really good at cold calling and I'm really good at, outbound marketing and advertising. And that's fine. But realizing that if we're going to do this and we're going to do this well, we actually have to become exceptional at lawn care. That can't just be assumed that we're exceptional at lawn care because we're a lawn care company. We actually have to make that our goal, is to be exceptional at lawn care. And it's amazing when we look at our organizations and can can look at it very transparently like that and say, you know what? The thing we're good at is not aligned with the promise that we're making out in the marketplace, right? Like that's a good start in assessing your customer journey is if I'm putting someone in the beginning of a journey with me, it's because I'm making some kind of a promise right at the beginning. And that promise needs to be the core of my business in most ways, right? Which is that everybody in the organization needs to know the promise we're making our customers on step one of the journey is like the guts of our being, right? Like this is we're bringing you in because we're like, I am really, really good at solving this problem that you might have, that I think you have based on all the research I've done. Come with me and I'll solve it for you. And if I'm 2 steps into that journey and all of a sudden I'm like, wait, I don't know that you guys are actually really good at this thing that you literally just told me you're awesome at, right? You brought me into the restaurant because you say you got the best pizza in the world, and I walk in, it's an ice cream shop, and I'm like, I don't understand what I'm doing here. Like this doesn't feel like the right thing, right? And in some cases, it's a result of poor marketing or misunderstandings in the marketplace, and we tune those things up. But it can be way more fundamental than that. If my business itself doesn't even understand that promise I'm making and doesn't live and breathe that promise as my what are we all doing here every day thing, chances are I'm going to fail on this journey. Like I'm misleading. Like the term misleading is funny because in a journey exercise, it literally means I'm leading them off in the wrong direction on purpose in some ways because I don't understand the promise I'm making to the customer in the first place. And so I have no ability to fulfill it as we go, which is leading in disappointment and churn and people leaving me and all these other things. That's a realization that happens to businesses all the time is they're like, God, we focus so much on a tactic that we don't really come back and be like, but wait, what are we even promising we're going to do here? And are we super awesome at that? Because if you're not, going and trying to get more people is not the answer.
So here's an interesting response to that because it reminded me of when you and I were working on some of these topics with this particular company. How you do find yourself, if you're lucky, at a moment where maybe the stakeholders around the table are nodding their head and they're going, okay, yeah, we're buying in, we understand. And yes, we understand that the core promise we're making is not a promise we can deliver on. And which by the way, is just a miracle to begin with. You can get a group of stakeholders to get to that point, period. But you get to that point, then the question becomes, well, so what are we supposed to do? Like, I can't go flip a switch. We leave this meeting. I can't go back to my desk and push the get better at lawn care button. And magically, we've just made these huge sweeping changes and everything works. How does a team effectively start down that path with initiatives, with goals that seem reasonable and achievable? And I say this because I remember, for example, one of the things that came out of this exercise, we highlighted some of the pain and the frustration that customers had feeling like a service had been delivered to their residents, to their lawn, and nothing really changes for them after that first service. The customer knows they came, maybe because they left a little door hanger that said, hey, we were here today, but they weren't home. They didn't watch them do any of the work. They just got a little note that said, I promise we were here. Were they here? I don't know. I'm not left with a takeaway or a feeling that I somehow, as the customer, started down this process of the payoff of, what I paid for, which is, in this case, my lawn's going to look awesome in X amount of time. So I was sort of left with this, in this vacuum, this empty space of, I bought a thing, you told me you came and you did something to my grass, and I can't really tell or feel it. I have nothing in that moment. And I remember us kind of spinning on topics like that where we said, okay, guys. And so I guess maybe I'm asking you to kind of help me remember correctly, or if this feels like a reasonable approach when you find yourself at a place acknowledging that the customer journey is an important thing to evaluate. You go, well, how do I get started? Is the answer, look for a bunch of little tiny things that are probably on the fringes of the big thing that you have to get to in time, but maybe that allows you to start chipping away. What are the little micro interactions you can have with a customer that might leave them with something unexpectedly delightful, unexpectedly joyful, a smile on their face, or removes a little bit of pain or demystifies a thing. Like how many of those things exist in our customers' experience with us? Micro interactions, are those the way to get started down the path? Or do you kind of have to go, hold on, no, let's put bigger targets on the board?
You really need to assess what are the state high, it can be high level. Like these don't have to be like the most granular things. But at a high level, I'm thinking like 5, 6, 7 stages. What are the key milestones of your journey, right? Understand just what are those things. I'm going to go tell people about my brand, and then I'm going to bring them into my experience. And if they leave, I'm going to figure out how to bring them back. If they stay, I'm going to try and move them into the thing that matters to them most. I'm going to try and convince them that my value that in exchange is appropriate for what they're looking for. I'm going to close the deal and complete the transaction. I'm going to fulfill the promise that I made. And throughout the entire way, I want to make sure that they feel like they're part of that journey, that they haven't been abandoned in some way. If you can start there, then you'll start to see, like, and I would say, look at each of those stages, and you can define them however you want. I'm fairly passionate about the fact of, like, you mentioned this earlier, but like, don't go out and just Google a journey map and start replacing what's there with your stuff and trying to fill all the things. I mean, that's fine if you want to do that, but at a really high level, be like, all right, brand engagement. This is when I'm first telling people about who I am. All right, what are we doing now? What do we hope the customer's going to do, and how are they going to receive this message? Who are we talking to? And what's going to motivate them to lean in and come check us out? And are there, to your point, are there delighters at this phase that we could include that might help, right? And some of it might be, it could be all kinds of things. You do something nice for someone, you give them something they didn't expect, you include a promo or a bundle or a referral friend, or you give them something that is useful to them that they didn't expect, that they didn't ask for, that they're not even expecting to pay for, and you're giving them that, whether it's knowledge or information or something physical, right? Like there's things in there that they might value, and you got to understand that. But work map, put those into your map. Just describe them. These are all my main points of my journey, and these are the things that are happening in this journey, and how relatively good are we at these things? And then I think to come back to your question is, don't try and solve all this at once, because one, you're not going to get there. Every change you're going to make is going to have another change somewhere else. And so you're going to have to be able to do this in a way that's somewhat iterative to make sure you're not making things worse along the way. Or, you make something positive here and negative here, and you don't know which created benefit. But you need to know the answer to these questions, right? You need to be able to know, all right, well, what do people expect to happen right here? Like, what do they want to happen? What are my customers looking to have happen now? And this goes to when we talk about the lawn care piece, is sometimes too just understanding where the journey is fractured, and then stack ranking that in some way, which is like, is this something that we could actually fix somewhat easily, or do we need more information, or is this the hardest thing we're going to do all year, but it's worth it? But you need to know, like, what is this thing, and like, how hard is it to do this? Because if you go back to the lawn care example, they're going to be like, oh, we leaned in, we started to map out the journey elements, all these things, and what we found is that people weren't satisfied with the quality of the work that we're doing. They didn't really understand the process of how lawn care even works. So they thought, why does my front yard look like the fairway at the golf course down the street now I've had one treatment? That's reasonable that you would help that person understand that. They didn't realize that people were showing up unexpected. They didn't realize that people's dogs were getting out. They didn't realize that people's property was getting damaged. They didn't realize. And now you're like, oh, okay. Can I fix all this in one fell swoop and suddenly make all my lawn care providers be awesome? Probably not. But could I give my customers a better way to alert me when these things are going on, and that I might be able to provide some kind of remedy in some reasonable amount of time? Because right now they just happen in the background, and the customer leaves, and we're like, well, we failed on that one, and we kind of checked the box and go get more. Like, go back to the top and put more in. We lost some folks. And instead, they became much more aware of the journey and realizing that, like, oh, this is a high friction point. When this thing happens right here, this couldn't be a stronger indicator that somebody's about to leave. And if we get more than one of these things, done, they're gone, right? So as an organization, what do you want? You want to be closer to the problem, right? So it's like, oh, my person showed up, they burnt the hell out of my grass. I'm frustrated. This isn't reasonable to me. I need to have a conversation with somebody right now, and somebody else will be like, here's what we can do to fix this. And I can start addressing the problem instead of waiting for, oh, and you let my dog out the following week. Oh, and you showed up in the middle of the birthday party. You're supposed to come on Saturday, came on Friday for some reason. Like, and to your point, I've debited everything of value I had. This is no longer worth it in any capacity for me, and I'm out. Not only am I out, but I'm gonna tell everybody I know that that was a terrible experience. That was not. I do not recommend. Don't do this. So, as an organization, understand your journey in those segments. Understand where you're weakest and where you're maybe failing your customers. If you don't know, figure it out. You can talk to customers in these phases. You can monitor things. You can measure. Understand like where's my biggest failure point in my journey right now, and can I prop that up somewhat quickly and start systematically trying to just keep leveling, pushing the floor up and up and up, so that more and more people are having a smooth journey. And then I can start being like, okay, now I want to create superpowers out of these journey steps. I want to be awesome at this stuff. But the problem is, too many organizations are awesome at one of or two of those moments, and the rest they're either ignoring or failing at, or certainly subpar. And they just keep investing in the things they're good at, and meanwhile, their customers are falling out in places they don't even understand.
So, to draw a straight line between everything you just described and business motivators, it's worth remarking that by investing in that exercise and that process and starting to identify those moments and improving in those areas, you are actually adding a lot of value and strengthening the things that the business cares about, because now you're saying to the business, the heavy lifting of continuing to have the engine of our business run doesn't have to only be done by the sales force knocking on doors. We've actually started to tinker with improving our retention over here in this area, and that actually has a meaningful impact on the business. So if you're trying to make that connection, or maybe you're trying to like plead the case to other stakeholders in your organization, just don't forget that part of the business value, if you need to tell that story internally, is that we're talking about things that drive retention numbers north. One way to solve it in their world was, well, we just got to keep pouring people in the top of the funnel, because we got 99.99 of them are bailing. Well, what would happen if we could just improve that number? What if we could move it from 99% of the people bail to 97? Like, what would that mean for the business? Oh my God, well, that would just light up all these other things. So let's not forget that one of the business motivators, one of the reasons that a business does this, is because you can draw a straight line between these types of exercises and improving metrics like retention. That's a very practical kind of, straight line thing. The other thing is being able to package up the customer journey in a form that's easy to understand for you and your team. Because to your point about not wanting to go hit Google and go look at the form of what does a customer journey map look like, and let me just drop in all my pieces. Really, we should be comfortable as a team and as leaders. I think part of the job of leadership is to help the team understand that this is really the assignment, and you should be comfortable in this way. Is I don't really care what form the journey map takes, so long as we can all collectively understand it internally, and I can go ask anybody on any of our teams what they think the customer journey probably looks like to some degree of certainty, and they can tell it back to me. Meaning, the time is probably not best spent making sure your journey map as a deliverable has all the right sentiment emojis and all the right chutes and ladder looking arcs. It could be a Word doc, it could be a few PowerPoint slides, it could be, any other form you can think of. But I think the litmus test is, hey, internally, we should know that a great customer journey map is just a story that anybody in our team can understand and can tell back to us. Whatever form that takes, that should be the form that it takes. So I'm thinking of this because maybe if we're trying to land the plane here in this episode, maybe somebody's going, okay, guys, you got me on board with the concept of investing in the customer journey as a theme, as a concept or a construct that has value, for our business. We're going to do that. So how do I really go back to my desk and get started then? And I think what I'm trying to offer up on that topic is just make sure whatever form you want that information to take is a form that your team is likely going to be able to quickly and easily understand. Speak the right language to your team members. It doesn't have to look like anything that Google is going to return back to you as image search results when you go type in customer journey map, because the end goal is to have a story that unifies your organization internally about what the customer is going through externally.
I think it's fine if you end up with a super shiny customer journey map as an artifact to say, I'm going to memorialize this whole exercise that we just did in some way and park it somewhere. That shouldn't really be the goal, right? Is to produce this thing. I think your point is spot on, which is if your team and your stakeholders can get to a point where everybody understands the journey, they understand what's happening at each phase of the journey, they understand what you want the customer to do and what the customer is expecting to do at that moment in the journey, and you have some level of understanding of how good you are at these things, and you can use all your metrics and numbers to help you get to there. Some of it is a gut as well. How much attention have we been put on this? How good have we tried to be at this thing? And making sure that everybody gets it, right? I understand that the promise we're making up here at the beginning of the journey is we're going to keep making that promise to this customer until they've given us our money and beyond, and we want to keep them around. We're not just going to become surgically good at one step of this journey, knowing that with pure brute force, we can create the revenue numbers that we want. Really, you need to look at, am I delighting as many people as I possibly can? Am I talking to the right people in the first place? And am I making promises I can keep? And if I'm not, how do I shore that up as quickly as I possibly can? Because really, as marketers, as builders, as product creators, as business owners, we want to spend as little money as possible to recruit the best people we can, to give them the best experience we can, to give them the best product and solution we can, to make the most money we're able to as a business, to where the customer's delighted, we're happy that we delivered on the thing we were trying to build, and we delight in solving that problem. But we are not managing to the fact that right up front, we're just going to assume 95% of the people are never going to make it through this journey. So let's get good at something else, right? Like, get good at the thing that you do. Make promises you can keep and delight people along the way and get everybody in your team on board with it. It doesn't matter what kind of artifact you produce. If everybody's on the same page, you're going to produce real results for real customers in a fashion that's exceptional for your business.
That's the show. I think that's the show. Thank you for tuning in, Jonathan. It's always good to hang out, brother. Thank you for being here. Look, if you're interested, Jonathan and I can both be found online. Check the show notes for links. We'd love to hear from you. If there's anything that you would love to hear more about, or you have questions about anything you've heard on the show, please drop us a note, say hi. We love it when people say hi. This has been Slackers. I'm Jamie.
I'm Jonathan.
Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you soon.